hear me? Okay. I like to call it water-wise gardening, and I thought Kevin made some really interesting points, and I was just recently at a water conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and for the first time I heard sort of negative stuff about southern Colorado because they are in a really bad drought and they have a lot of the same issues. And I just think I'm not from here, but I think sometimes people who move to Colorado have a better sense of how beautiful this state is and a sense of place. So I think in a lot of ways, southern Colorado is much more like northern New Mexico. The kinds of plants, the kind of weather, but I'm always surprised when I go down there how beautiful their gardens are and why people come from all over the world to New Mexico. And I come back and I'm like, we could be even more beautiful than they are. And I don't think that, and I think actually we would use less water in our gardens. So I'm just always astonished at the difference, sort of cultural difference horticulturally between the two states. So let's see if I do this. I actually take care of the demonstration garden that is around our office in Pueblo, out by the airport. So I'm pretty hands-on. I think that's the best way to learn. There's been a garden done up, I think in Centennial, and it's done in a very formal European geometric style with serried plants. So this can be anything you want. It's not a style of gardening. People think it's a style of gardening. It's the culture of gardening. So it can be any way you want it to be, but just using plants that are more appropriate for our climate. So here's a couple of examples. This is I took these pictures at the Denver Botanic Garden. So it's really, once you understand the science behind it, so to speak, I think designing a garden is always an art. There's an art to it. So if you have a vision, and I personally prefer gardens that show people's personalities. They always catch my eye, and I think they should reflect the owners of the garden. People do so many I was amazed when I moved here. It's like bluegrass lawn from the sidewalk to the foundation. And then I found out that's like a status symbol here. And I was like, that's an interesting thing. This is a garden that is out by Beulah, and it's, there's a few pictures I think in this. This is hand water. This is an older man who actually waters this with a bucket, not with the hose. He puts the water in the bucket, and then he goes, so he knows exactly how much water each plant gets. And it's one of the most beautiful gardens I've ever seen. So I really think I have seen gardens here that have been done really well, that look as lush and as beautiful as any perennial bed or a shrub border that I have seen in a gardening book or a gardening magazine from England. You always see those big estates, and they have these, miles of perennial beds flowing over with color. And so this is at the demonstration garden that I work on, and those are all, I think in that picture, pretty much all at least Southwest native plants. So I'll talk a little bit about the benefits of xeriscaping. That's also the garden that I take care of. So one of the benefits one of the things that happens, I think people have gotten very good at conserving water in their homes. I mean, they've done a lot of studies about this, and I think Denver won an award recently, in the whole nation, they're really good at saving water. And I think people get that in their homes, turn the tap off when you're brushing your teeth, all that kind of stuff. And they do it really well, but I think they have a little bit harder or a difficult time conserving water outside. And during those same months where you had that chart where, like, here's all the water melting, and here we got lots of water in May and June and July, and it's all coming down, it's going down the rivers. That's also the time that we really need to be conserving water in our gardens. It's hot. Sometimes it's like almost 70% of the water coming out of your tap, which is, been cleaned and treated, and you're watering your lawn. So I'm going to quickly go through some of the benefits. It conserves time. I think if I don't have to, I've been doing gardening professionally for, I don't want to say how many years, but let's say several decades. And I always feel that with low maintenance gardening, they used to talk about low maintenance gardening, and I thought, if I have to only touch it once a year, I think that's pretty good. If I only have to touch that shrub once, or deadhead that flower once, or cut it down, or whatever, that I think that's pretty good. And I have found that to be true with waterwise gardening, that most of those things really only need to be touched about once a year. So you're going to not be mowing so much or weeding so much if you do it right. And fertilizing. I hardly do any fertilizing at all in this garden, so I think I fertilize the experimental grass plots, basically. So in that way, it's also going to conserve money. This is like a win-win-win kind of thing that I love. So you're going to obviously have lower water bills, reduce labor. I love that because I'm a big bang for my buck and the easiest way to go kind of gardener. So, and then there are also ecological benefits to this. I don't know if I mentioned this, but you're going to reduce the runoff and clippings, all that stuff that's left over. Hopefully you would compost it anyway. And then it conserves natural resources. One of the other benefits of doing water-wise gardening, we always encourage people, I think I brought a handout on native herbaceous perennials. When you use native species, you protect native species. So if you plant native plants in your garden, you're going to have forage and habitat for pollinators and birds, for mammals, all kinds of things. So you're replicating the natural ecology. And they're all more drought tolerant, obviously, if they're native. So I'm going to go quick into the principles. The first time I did did a class in xeriscaping, I thought, these are all the same principles of good horticulture. It doesn't matter if you're in Seattle or you're in LA or you're in St. Louis, Missouri. If you understand where you are and what your climate is, if you have a sense of place and you live, if you learn to live where you live, you'll be much more successful and conserve a lot. So these principles are all the same ones I learned in college. I thought, the first time I saw it, these are the principles of xeriscaping. No, that's the principles of good horticulture. That's, just common sense. I'm going to talk most about design, I think, tonight. I'm going to go through all the principles, but I think one of the stumbling blocks for a lot of people is thinking that they cannot design a garden. And I think if you just think some basic things that anybody can really do this. I don't know if you can see these. So the first thing you're going to do is draw a base plan. If you can use a ruler, you can draw. If you can use a tape measure, you can do this. So you're going to do a scale drawing. So just go around and measure. Here's my driveway. It's this long. Here's the curb. Here's the house. Here's the garage. Just everything existing, pretty much. And then, you know, if you have your base map done to scale, or basically to scale, then you can just put something on top, tracing paper, and do what's called the bubble diagram. And this is sort of the thinking thing. And I think people have a hard time. I don't like my kitchen in my house because my sink turns my back away from the window. I would rather my kitchen sink was right underneath the window so I could look at my garden when I wash dishes. But I think views are pretty simple. Look out your windows, walk around, what looks good. When I've met with people at Pueblo West, they always want their views. I don't want any trees, I want to see Pikes Peak, you know. And so they're so afraid to plant. I said, well, you could plant trees to frame that view. So they're, you know, it doesn't block it, it frames it. So look at those things, just walk around. What do I like to see? What do I want to see? And what don't I want to see? Because sometimes people do really crazy things to screen out. Oh, my neighbor has a really ugly second-story deck and they can look in my garden. Just think about that stuff. So I think water access, all these things right here, slopes, please don't put lawns on slopes. That's a big water waster. And doing a bubble diagram, I think I have a, so this is the same gentleman. So how you're going to use it, how you want to use it. So you really want to think about how you want to use it. And people ask me, what's the best lawn? I say, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to have kids playing on it? Do you have grandchildren playing on it? Do you have dogs that you want to have a little lawn? They're sort of surprised when I say, put a little tiny bluegrass lawn in. If you're really going to use it, if somebody's going to walk on it and use it and play on it, it's fine. So you really have to define your uses. Do you want a utility shed? Do you want an outdoor kitchen? Do you want a patio? One of the good things about my old house that I bought was that the backyard faces northeast. And in the summer, we live on our back deck because it's the coolest part of our garden, and we spend a lot of time there. So really think about it. So this is just a little example out of a garden notes from the Colorado Master Gardeners training, actually, which is online. All of this is online. So they rearrange it, but doing that kind of bubble thing, I want a vegetable garden, I want a flower bed, I want a patio. When you do that and you can play with it over and over again, it will also show you what your hydrozones are in your garden. And hydrozoning is huge. It's that sort of culture of horticulture. You want to put plants together that need the same soil, the same sun or shade, the same amount of water, that have sort of the same needs. So doing this bubble diagram kind of thing is very effective. So this is the bullet. You can see in the middle is the house. So that might be where you'd have what they call an oasis. So that's probably where your patio, where you're going to hang out in your garden, where you probably want to have the most water use. In our garden at the water district, we have a moderate water zone. That's right, those beds are right next to the building. And so as you get out, you want to use less and less water. And that also helps with maintenance. You know, not only conserves water, but just makes it easier for maintaining too. So you want to differentiate between your different water zones. This is just really, really important. And you want to think about seasonal interest. What am I going to see when I look out my windows in the wintertime? Maybe do I have some grasses that are going to catch the snow when we have snow? Things like that. So then you want to improve the soil. If you're going to use native plants, you really don't need to do a lot to the soil. If you want to grow vegetables and small fruits and fruit trees, you want to amend the soil because you're bringing in exotic plants that probably are not going to be real happy with our soil. So I'm going to do this. So one of the things you have to do is figure out, there are tests. The CSU has a lab. It's really easy to do a soil test, costs about $30, and takes 2 weeks, and you'll know. And it's always a good starting point to know what you're starting with. So you want to differentiate between your different water zones. This is just really, really important. And you want to think about seasonal interest. What am I going to see when I look out my windows in the wintertime maybe? Do I have some grasses that are going to catch the snow when we have snow? Things like that. So then you want to improve the soil. If you're going to use native plants, you really don't need to do a lot to the soil. If you want to grow vegetables and small fruits and fruit trees, you want to amend the soil because you're bringing in exotic plants that probably are not going to be real happy with our soil. So I'll do this. So one of the things you have to do is figure out, there are tests. The CSU has a lab. It's really easy to do a soil test, costs about $30, and takes 2 weeks, and you'll know. And it's always a good starting point to know what you're starting with. So this is from the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy garden, and I love this because I've seen this a couple of times in person. So they added different amounts of organic matter before they put these lawns down, just to test it. And it was so fun because I saw this in the middle of the summer, and they had turned the irrigation off. And these plots that had 6 cubic yards had the most organic matter before they put the sod down, were still green in the middle of the summer without water. So I really tell everyone, if you got a front load if you're going to do a turf area in your garden, because it's the one time you can really mix that soil, even if you were doing native grass. So it's really important. So you also want to create practical turf areas. I'm done with mowing personally. I've mowed a lot of lawns, and I don't know what it's about, what this fixation with lawns is about. I think it's that our ideas of historically of garden design come from England, from Northern Europe, and they, it's like Oregon. My husband's from Oregon, and I thought, what's the big deal with us? So it's green. And I went there and said, yeah, it's green because it rains all the time. They have all this water, and it's the same in England and, Ireland. They get lots of water. So that their design, that's their xeriscaping. They have a sense of place. We got lots of water, it's really green. Let's build ha-has and look at the sheep out there. So, but that got brought with our forefathers, and that whole idea of the big expanse of dark green lawn. And to me, it's like, if you're not really using it, if you don't want to play croquet, or have a badminton net, or have picnics on your lawn, play with your kids, why do you have it? So, get rid of it. It really should be a planned part with a real use. If you're really going to use it, or it's really part of your design scheme. So limit it. It's fine to have a little lawn. I understand that little nice green oasis thing to it, but acres of it, I don't know what that's about. So this is one I see all the time. In the shade, lawns don't like it. On narrow strips, how are you going to water that? And on steep slopes. And then people want to put them way away from where it's really easy to put irrigation in. So I think you really have to consider all those things. Ground covers, I think are really underused. And I think there are enormous savings all the way around. Water, fertilizer, maintenance, fossil fuels. You're not, burning gas to mow them. So I think there's a lot of areas where people could really use ground covers. What are you doing here? Water efficiently with appropriate irrigation methods. I don't understand people with drip systems in areas that maybe need more water, better coverage. One of the places they use it wrong is when they plant shrubs and trees, and then they put one emitter. And I'm like, and then I get the phone calls, and they're going, my trees are dying. And I go, well, how are you irrigating them? I have it on a drip system. Where's the emitter? It's 6 inches from the trunk of the tree. I turn it on every other day. And I'm like, where do you think that water is going? How big do you think the roots of that tree are? And they get kind of crazy when I say, just pretend you cut your tree down and where the top of it fell, that's where you need to water. And so I think it's really important to use drip correctly and install it correctly. So they've done some studies, and they actually find people who hand water. Okay, people who hand water actually are very efficient. You know why? They only do it when they have to, instead of a timer. Plants do not read clocks. So this is back to the hydrozoning. This is the xeric garden at the Denver Botanic Gardens. And you can see it looks like a beautiful English perennial bed, but these are all very xeric plants. That's a low water zone. This is in my garden at the Southeastern Conservancy, and this is under a tree in the moderate water zone. So, but it's mulched, so you have to kind of know. The good thing about drip is it applies it to the root zone, but put enough emitters in that you cover the root zone. I think soaker hoses are the best way to do edibles. And growing edibles is really popular, but if you have raised beds or you're doing furrows or however you're growing your vegetables, it's going to change. Good cultural practice says that you need to rotate, even if you're just a homeowner. It's like mini agriculture. You want to rotate your crops, and therefore your irrigation needs are going to change. And I think soaker hoses are the most flexible way to irrigate edibles. And here's the simplest thing that I do with children. I've done this with children, 4th graders. Just put some cans out and measure your actual precipitation rate. People go, well, I water for 30 minutes every other day. And I go, do you know how much water you're putting on? Well, I do it for 30 minutes every other day. Yeah, that's the amount of time you're watering, but how much water are you actually putting on? So this is very simple. I think Jean brought the lawn watering guides. Put 6 cans out of the same size. Turn your irrigation on for 10 minutes. See where it gets a lot of water, see where it gets a little water. Maybe I'm not getting uniform distribution of water. Put it all into one can and measure it with a ruler. You now have your precipitation rate, and you can really calculate. You can set your timers, you can set your irrigation to give you a certain amount of water instead of a certain amount of time. So that's pretty easy. This is what I see all the time. I don't know why they insist on
putting these little lawn areas in between these heat islands of asphalt and concrete, and then watering the bejeebers out of them. This design, so this is a good thing about, I think, that always inspires me in New Mexico. This would be a real xeric commercial landscape right here. But it wouldn't be bluegrass with water running down across the parking lot. So we really need to get better at this here. So it's easy to check your soil moisture. This is what things need. And really, trees in Colorado, you need to water them 18 to 24 inches down, but you need to water the whole root zone. And these are the things, I keep mentioning trees because these are the things that really suffer during a drought. People stop watering their trees. And it's such an investment. It's so hot here, why would you not want shade? It takes years to grow a tree. A mature tree usually takes about 20, 25 years to grow a mature tree. Why would you let it die in a drought? I would let my lawn die in a drought because I can replace that lawn in one day. But it takes a whole generation to grow a mature tree. So just understand that. So different things need different amounts of water. If you water your lawn down to a depth, your bluegrass down to a depth of 10 inches, you're wasting water. Because genetically, it probably, in our soil, the feeder roots are not down at 10 inches. You're just throwing water away. So it's good to understand your soil. So this is an easy way. Take a weeder or a screwdriver or a piece of rebar and see how far you can stick it down after you've irrigated an area. Because that's really going to show you how far down the moisture's gone. That's just, kind of common sense. Select appropriate plants and group plants according to their similar needs. This is a garden that's going to be on the Xeriscape tour again this June in Pueblo. This garden is all native plants. This man is the president of the Cactus and Succulent Society. And this is Don Barnett's garden. But look at how beautiful this is. It's absolutely a gorgeous garden. And those are all native plants. He has, I think 100 different species of cactus in there. And you don't see them, it doesn't look like a cactus garden. I think this was taken in May, but those are all native plants. And there's no irrigation system. I'm sure he really hardly ever waters. So it can really be lush and be real xeric. This is another close-up of that xeric garden at the Denver Botanic Garden. So these are very low water, but they're put together. This is a little, I love this. This is a garden that's near, I will keep watching this garden. It's near me in Pueblo, and I just love what they did with their health strip. And I look at it, and then they have grasses that grow in the fall. So it really is just kind of putting the right things together, and it can be very simple and be very elegant. Use mulch. This is so important. It just does so many positive things. I can't think of a downside unless you put the wrong mulch with the wrong plants. And in our windy area, using pea gravel is an excellent mulch for most everything. Unless you had a real moderate water zone or an area that a shady area maybe that you did a lot of really water-loving plants. So that it really has a lot of benefits. Organic mulches are really good. Maybe if you did a shady area under a tree, you might want to put bark mulch down. And you always want to apply them. There are advantages and disadvantages to both of these, either to organic mulches, which are the wood-based, plant-based mulches, or to the, doesn't want to do. Or inorganic mulches. If you were doing native plants, a lot of sort of high desert, short grass prairie native plants, you would definitely want to do rock and pea gravel on the small size as mulch. It actually directs, when it rains, it directs the water into the soil. I just dug something up and there were earthworms. There are always earthworms underneath this. If you plant enough stuff and your mulch is thick enough, you'll get microorganisms, you'll get earthworms, you'll get a whole soil ecology happening underneath there. It does retain heat, which is labeled as a disadvantage here. In the winter, it's actually can be an advantage. If you have some plants that are, they're really good for this zone, it can help you with that. If you don't put anything underneath it, landscape cloth, anything like that, it's pretty easy to work in pea gravel to just move it away and add a plant or take something out. And then we're down to the last one, which is maintenance. And there is no free lunch. People say, I don't want to do any raking, and I don't want to water, and I don't want this, I don't want that, but I want flowers all year long and my garden to be really green. And there just is no way. You have to do some maintenance. So here are the things you would do in the spring. I'm busy in my garden right now. I don't know about you. There's really not that much in the summer. Make sure your irrigation's working right. You might have some pests in your vegetables, squash bugs in your zucchini or something. Fertilize your lawn if you only do it once a year. This is for fescue and bluegrass, for cool season grasses. Native grasses, buffalo and blue grommet, you want to fertilize. If you want to fertilize them, you would do that in July. So when in the middle of their most active growing time. And pruning. I go in, even with the natives like rabbit brush, I'll go in the wintertime and I'll deadhead them and shape them a little bit once a year. I touch them once a year and that's it. And watering. Watering is really important because with our warm winters here, really, things are still, especially evergreens, are still photosynthesizing. So if the soil completely dries out, you are going to have a lot of stress on your trees especially. So I'm going to invite you, if you're in Pueblo, to come take a look at the garden. We actually have, this is a Plant Select demonstration garden, and there are 4 now, 4 demonstration gardens, Plant Select demonstration gardens in Pueblo County. I don't know where my time is. Perfect. Questions?